All right, you walk out to your car and you see this. What do?
You leave the keys next to the car. The bees own the car. That's their car. You don't own that car anymore.
These are honeybees that swarmed a car in Salisbury yesterday. Master beekeeper Jim Leather with Victory Garden Apiary says it's common to see bees swarm in branches and on shrubs, but sometimes they'll gather on cars too. Jim came in and gathered the bees with his bee vac. And then this morning, Jim got those bees into a hive. He says there were 3 queens in that swarm. He was able to separate and save them. Good for him.
That's frightening.
Yeah.
You walk out and you're like, oh, this is a great day. And then
That's what you're greeted with. It is a great day.
Tuesday, we sat down with Tricia King, president of the Lower Eastern Shore Beekeeping Association. She talked about how the organization offers support to anyone wanting to raise bees.
Yeah, and during the interview, she admitted it's not easy, especially at first. Now, listening to her took me back to July of 2012, and that's when I suited up and learned how to be a busy beekeeper.
Think you work hard? In the bee world, it's all work and nothing else.
The life of a bee is really rather, it's fascinating actually. A little worker bee in a real busy pollen nectar flow will only survive about 30 days. They work themselves to death, literally.
And Nancy Goggin should know. She's a beekeeper and has been for the last 8 years.
I was teaching over at Sussex Tech, and I was always interested in what project I could get that would be hands-on for the students to participate in. And I got this wild idea that I would start some bees.
And that wild idea sent her on a wild journey.
Now, I come from a farm background, and it's one thing to think about bees as you see them out. It's another thing to raise them.
After Nancy's first encounter with bees, she wasn't sure it was such a good idea.
My mentor was Robert Mitchell, who's the state apiarist. I can remember one day going out there, and he opened up the lid on the hive, and if you think this little buzzing that you hear here, well, it's nothing to 60,000 bees in a hive, which is that many when you have a full hive or more. Sounds like a freight train.
But after a year of guidance,
I was hooked. Again, it's one of those things where people, if they're successful their first year or first couple of years, then they tend to keep doing it.
now, in addition to these hives, Nancy tends to hives in Milton and Laurel. She says the dynamics of bee life is what fascinates her the most.
After you get them through the first year, then the bees pretty much can take care of themselves with a little bit of help.
And an understanding of the bee hierarchy.
The queen is the most important bee in the hive. There's only one. Through her pheromone release, she pretty much governs everything, including the attitude of the hive.
That's all brood. That's all young bee larvae.
The queen's job is simple, laying the eggs that will spawn the next generation of bees in the hive. She spends her life safely tucked away.
She may have gone down below.
In fact, we couldn't find her in this hive.
See this odd-looking bee?
The big one?
Yes.
Yes, is that the queen?
No, that is the drone.
Oh.
The male figure in the beehive is the drone. Drones have no purpose other than to mate with the queen. In preparation, they basically eat the pollen and nectar collected by the female workers. That's why they're so big.
All these bees, other bees that you see on here, are worker bees.
That takes us back to the female worker bees. They act as nurses, feeding the brood.
Nurse bees, they're all taking care of these cells, making sure everything stays clean and everything stays good during the time that the larvae are developing.
The worker bees also accept pollen and nectar from adult foragers and guard the hive. When they get older, they become the foragers, heading out of the hive to collect nectar and pollen.
This is the kind of hive that you want.
As a beekeeper, Nancy helps that process, especially this time of year.
In the dead of summer, right in the middle of summer, when things have been really hot, plants are not necessarily blooming, the natural plants, and they're not producing nectar.
So she feeds the bees sugar water.
These feeders were full about 2 hours ago. You can see how they're all more than half empty. They're fairly hungry. In this hive, this is not at capacity.
I have to admit, being around 20,000 bees made me a little nervous, even though I was suited up.
You don't move fast, you don't jerk, you don't swipe.
I didn't get stung, but Nancy says she has plenty of times. It's part of being a beekeeper.
Once you get stung, or you're on a horse and you get thrown off, you get back on, whatever, after a while, you get over it. I got over it.
And she certainly doesn't take it personally.
There's a very special relationship with the beekeeper and their bees. To watch the activity, to be a part of that activity, to be a part of a social insect where every single bee exists for the support of the whole, not for the individual, but for the whole. Just a very special feeling.
I really had fun doing that. That was 11 years ago, but once I got suited up and everything, I was fine. I was not worried about getting stung. It was fascinating.
And you didn't get stung.
I did not get stung.
See, I feel like if I did that, somehow, some way, I'd get stung like 50 times and somebody would have to rush me to the hospital.
Oh, no. You really, the suits really do a good job of protecting you. And, you know, now I don't kill bees. I see a bee, I respect what it's on the earth to do.
Okay.
And that has helped me.
Very cool.